A handsome Italian bachelor charms the daughter of a wealthy Mexican politician and gets caught in a dangerous rivalry. He unexpectedly reunites with someone from his past, forcing him to choose between keeping up appearances to fulfill his dreams or leaving it all behind to be with the love of his life. One late night in Bari, Italy, a man loudly banging on a door disturbs the peace of an apartment complex. Dominica answers and asks what he wants, and the man says he'll pay for the courtesan's time. So the woman tells her son Amedeo to step out of the room so they can have some privacy. Years later, on a private yacht in Acapulco, Mexico, Ugo Conti is sunbathing when the captain interrupts and tells him that Mrs. Liz Avril wants to see him. Instead of going to the cabin where she's staying, he climbs to the bridge and sees a nearby yacht with ladies in bikinis. Ugo asks the captain to steer the vessel towards them, and as they draw nearer, he shows off by opening an expensive champagne bottle and lifts it as an invitation. Eventually, the women board the yacht, and he introduces himself as a rich count from Luciana, Italy. The man shows them the Ugo Conti Foundation social media account with 1.5 million followers. While all the ladies are shocked by his wealth and status, Teresa Rondia, the daughter of a well-known politician, seems the most charmed by his looks and passion for the environment. Liz wakes up and angrily tells the women to leave, so Ugo apologizes for his aunt's rude behavior. Before getting off the yacht, Teresa hurriedly asks him to attend her birthday party later. Ugo prepares to leave by sunset, and Liz tries to stop him, but he doesn't care about her feelings. He threatens to break up with her, revealing that she's his girlfriend and not his aunt. Liz backs down and asks forgiveness for how she acted earlier, and while he accepts her apology, he leaves anyway and spends the night partying with Teresa and her friends. She finds out about his eventful night on social media and confronts him when he returns the next day. Ugo explains he needs the exposure for his foundation, but adds that he can no longer stand her nagging. His girlfriend begs him not to leave her, so he smiles and asks her to marry him, which she happily accepts. Years ago, the teenage Amedeo knocked on his mother's door but realized she was with a client. While waiting outside, he saw a man leaving Marietta's room, so he visited her instead. Inside Marietta's room, they drank wine, and he eventually made love to a woman for the first time. Unfortunately, Amedeo's mother found out about the tryst, so she flew into a blind rage. Unable to accept the fact that her son lost his innocence to a fellow courtesan, Dominica attacked Marietta with a broken wine bottle and went to jail, leaving Amedeo to fend for himself. In Mexico, Ugo disappointedly learns that Liz's children manage her estate and are withholding her pension because of their engagement. She says they can still get married, but he insists they need her children's approval, so she flies to New York to speak to them. One day, the Count receives a call from Liz who says that she's already talked to a lawyer and that they'll likely win the case. She asks him to go to New York so they can get married, but he doesn't respond and only pretends to listen. While his girlfriend's talking on the phone, Ugo secretly chats with Teresa, who says she'll send a jet and pick him up at the airport. He tells Liz he loves her when she asks, but when the call ends, he opens her safe, grabs all her cash, and heads out. Hours later, Teresa meets the Count at the airport and takes him to a luxurious suite at Mexico's finest hotel. She invites him to a party at her house, but he plays it cool and says he's too tired. However, when the woman reveals that the president will be there and adds that he can use the opportunity to grow his foundation's network, he changes his mind and agrees to go. Later that evening, Teresa's father and Secretary of Public Works, Alonso Rondia, asks his right-hand man, Mario Soto, to get rid of the protesters gathered around his home before the president arrives and announces his candidacy as governor of Oaxaca. He then checks in with his PR manager, Frida Becker, to see which guests will be at the party, but his daughter interrupts and says Count Conti has just arrived. Frida confirms Conti isn't on the guest list, and Mario says he can run a background check, but Alonso doesn't think it's necessary since he's an Italian aristocrat and his daughter's friend. Curious about the mysterious guest, Frida searches for him online and realizes she knows him. Meanwhile, Teresa introduces Ugo to her father and mother, Alicia Rondia, in the other room. Wanting to impress the guest, Alonso shows off his prized collection of unused wine glasses from Tsar Nikolai Romanov and makes a bad joke about environmentalists, but Ugo doesn't laugh along. Taking his daughter's hint, he directs Ugo to the almanac nobilis to confirm his family's noble blood. He asks about the Count's line of work, so the guest talks about his foundation and its goals. Then, Mario interrupts the conversation and takes Alonso to a separate room. Ignacio Garduño tells the politician that the president of Mexico isn't coming to the party and will fully withdraw his support if the man fails to gain the public's trust. Desperate to save face from crowds expecting news of his candidacy, he instructs Frida to fix the problem. She remembers they have a special guest and suggests that they announce his ecological foundation. Later, the secretary entertains guests with his wife, who reminds him not to show that he's upset. However, after meeting with rival candidate Justino Nava and renowned journalist Ernesto Arias, the pressure gets to his nerves and he walks out. Mario recommends projects they can announce, but the frustrated Alonso throws his phone because none of them are noteworthy enough to cover up the president's snub. Just then, they notice people gathering around the Count, visibly captivated by his wit and charm. Realizing Frida was onto something, the secretary's advisor suggests unveiling the Ugo Conti Foundation. Alonso wastes no time and meets the Italian aristocrat in his library to strike a deal. The crowd applauds as the politician introduces Count Ugo Conti and reveals he'll donate to his noble cause. But Frida isn't happy that they're buying it. Ernesto's confused while Justino seems genuinely shocked and relieved by the unexpected unfolding of events. Shortly after the announcement, Teresa introduces Frida and Ugo, who stare at each other as if they've just seen a ghost. He gazes deep into her eyes while slowly lifting and kissing her hand. Frida's breathless, but as soon as she collects herself, she quickly leaves the room. The Count follows her and they start arguing about a past nobody else knows about. When Ernesto appears, she introduces him to Ugo and then rushes off, but he's too distracted to entertain the journalist. Years ago, Frida worked at a bar in Italy when she met Ugo and introduced herself as Concha. She knew him as Amedeo, revealing they both changed their names at some point in their lives. He invited the woman to a simple dinner, but she refused and ditched him instead. One night after he finished cleaning commodes at his job, she showed up with coffee to apologize. Concha wanted to go home, but her feet hurt, so he carried her on his back. She asked the man if he expected her to sleep with him out of gratitude, but he insisted he wanted to date her. The two eventually became a couple, and while they didn't have a lot of money, they were happily in love and shared the dream of moving to a different country. Due to her history as an activist, Concha couldn't return to Mexico, so Amedeo promised to take her to Germany instead. The following day, he showed up in a red convertible at their usual meeting place. When she asked who it belonged to, her boyfriend brushed off her concern and took her on a ride. However, in the next city, authorities waited to confront the thief driving the stolen vehicle, so he ordered Concha to get out of the car because she's an undocumented immigrant. Right after his girlfriend escaped, the Italian police pulled him over and arrested him for grand theft auto. In the present, Teresa live streams with the disinterested Count while the press takes pictures of them. Later in his hotel room, Ugo gets a call from Liz, who's furious that he hasn't phoned in weeks. The American socialite says she knows he's in Mexico and that she's flying there tomorrow, but he counters that she can only do so if she fixes the issue with her children. Moments later, the concierge reminds the Count about an unpaid balance of $32,500, so he says he'll make arrangements for the payment and returns to his suite, worried about the bill. That afternoon, Mario and Frida tell their boss that his approval rating has gone up by 20%, and everyone agrees they have Teresa and Ugo to thank for his growing popularity. Before long, the Count arrives and informs Alonso that he's leaving to oversee other projects, hinting that he doesn't have access to his funds while in Mexico. However, the secretary convinces him to stay by promising to cover all of his expenses. In exchange, the man has to help with Project Pochutla, a future resort on the coast of Oaxaca. When the men head out of the building together, a protester calls them murderers and hurls a rock, hitting the Count's head. Years earlier, when Amedeo was still in jail, he developed a close bond with a proper nobleman, Count Francesco de Astis, after he gave him a copy of Dangerous Liaisons. He taught him manners and how to act around people so they would obey and respect him. Francesco pulled some strings to clean Amedeo's police record, and eventually they were released together. Outside the prison, the Count let him decide if he wanted to return to his old life or become the man he had always dreamed of. Suddenly, he heard Concha Concha calling his name from across the street. But after thinking for a few seconds, he got into the aristocrat's vehicle without saying a word. In the present, the groggy Ugo wakes up in a hospital bed and sees Frida watching over him. He calls her by her real name, so she subtly warns him that Mario's in the room with them. As soon as they're alone, she sits beside her ex-boyfriend, who takes her hand and apologizes for leaving years ago. However, she pulls her hand away and says he did her a favor because she was able to move to Germany, finish university, and take on the name of the couple who employed her. Ugo begs to meet her privately, but she reminds him of his betrayal and leaves the room. Later, Alonso stops by, hands the man a credit card for personal use, and says his hotel bill is paid off. Then, while alone with the patient, Teresa confesses her inner desires and asks if he feels the same way. He's too elated to say anything, so she takes his muted response as a yes. It doesn't take long for their relationship to reach the next level, and even though Ugo asks to keep things private, Teresa wants to post about them on social media. The woman's friends pressure her to publicize their dating status because she might continue losing followers, and Frida agrees with the plan. That evening, Ugo dances with his former girlfriend and claims he came to Mexico hoping to find her. However, the woman points out that he already has Teresa and a powerful ally in Alonso, who can make him a wealthy man. He denies her insinuations, but Frida warns him about how dangerous Mexican politicians are. She tells him to leave before it's too late, but Ugo says he's not going anywhere without her. That night, Ugo heads to the bar and shares a drink with Ernesto, who's writing a story on Alonso, a corrupt politician who once covered up a massacre involving the current president. He reveals that as a reward for his silence, the president allowed the secretary to appropriate Oaxaca's protected lands, displacing thousands of natives. The next morning, Ugo eats breakfast with Arondias and learns that Ernesto was found lifeless. He immediately visits his ex-girlfriend to warn her and suggests they escape since it's no longer safe. He confesses that he still loves her, and they make passionate love. But after sharing the intimate moment, Frida tells him she's no longer the same woman he used to know. The man returns to his suite and packs his things when Teresa says she may be pregnant. He assures her that he'll fix it and instructs her to go home and not tell anyone. Before Amedeo led a double life, Francesco took him to Switzerland to meet the real Count Ugo Conti. He was the only son of his second cousins, Maria Ricci and Umberto Conti, who appointed the Count as his legal guardian before they died. Francesco wanted his friend to take over Ugo's identity, so he taught him about the Almanac Nobilis and gave him a new passport and the Ugo Conti Foundation social media account. He instructed Amedeo to burn the remnants of his previous identity and demanded complete obedience, then officially welcomed him into the family as the new Count Ugo Conti. Currently, in Mexico, Alonso draws flack when the explosion of his new gas pipes causes injuries and casualties. Ignacio advises him to postpone his candidacy or to create a distraction that'll make people forget about the accident. Luckily for the secretary, he finds the perfect diversion when Ugo asks for his daughter's hand in marriage. He accepts the man's proposal without hesitation and informs his family of the good news. They celebrate by toasting champagne using the Tsar's expensive wine glasses, but everyone is shocked when Ugo smashes his. The Count explains it's a time-honored tradition for welcoming new family members, so the Rondias follow his lead and break their glasses one by one. Following the public wedding announcement, the family hosts a lavish engagement party for Ugo and Teresa, and they refuse to talk about the gas pipe incident in front of the media. Months ago at a fancy casino, Count Ugo met with patrons of their foundation but later found out that he'd have to spend the night with them in exchange for their generous donations. Amedeo, who viewed Francesco as a father figure, felt betrayed by his actions, so he left that evening and tried his luck at the casino, where he met Liz Avril for the first time. In the present, Ugo receives a call from Liz and confirms that he's engaged. He tells her to return to her grandchildren and to leave him alone, then ends the conversation. Then, Alonso sees the Count at his office and shares that the president is finally backing his candidacy as governor of Oaxaca. To protect their assets, he tells his future son-in-law that he'll entrust him with his estate and name him as CEO of the company handling Project Pochutla. Later, while the elated Ugo walks the streets alone, 3 men abduct him in broad daylight. They take him to a warehouse and tie him up for interrogation, punching him whenever he talks too much or doesn't give them straight answers. Meanwhile, the secretary receives an unexpected visit from Ignacio, who reveals Ugo's past and recent confessions. The man agrees to partner with his old friend on the Pochutla project if the Count's real identity remains hidden from everyone, including the president. Alonso informs his family about the deception and calls the wedding off, but his daughter objects because she's carrying his child and doesn't want to lose her popularity on social media. Infuriated, the father implies that things will end badly for her boyfriend, so she storms out of the room. Soon, Teresa calls Frida for help with the situation while her father confronts the Count. At the warehouse, Alonso's about to shoot the conman when the president of Mexico suddenly arrives with Justino. He emphasizes that he can no longer run for governor, but if he plays his cards right in the next few months, there might be a place for him in Congress. Justino then meets with Frida, thanks her for the information, and assures her that he'll preserve Oaxaca as they agreed. He states his opponent's political career is cancelled, so she shakes his hand and congratulates him as the new governor. Frida sees Alonso pointing a loaded gun at the man she once loved, so she tries to appeal to his reason. Then, she shows the politician a live video broadcast of his daughter telling the world what her father might do after finding out she's pregnant. The woman calmly explains that if anything happens to Teresa's future husband, everyone will know he's behind it, even if there's no evidence. All of a sudden, he aims at the fake aristocrat, then at Frida, and then himself. When the disgraced politician realizes he can't do it, he drops the weapon to the floor, then trudges with heavy feet and eyes filled with rage. Ugo thanks Frida for saving his life, but she admonishes him, stating that he should have left when he still had the chance. Then, it dawns on him that it had always been her plan to destroy Alonso. When the police included her on Mexico's most wanted list, she was protesting against Teresa's father. Since it was too dangerous for her to stay in the country, she fled to Europe. He realized that his ex-girlfriend used him for revenge, which he doesn't object to and explains that there are things Frida can do that Concha couldn't. Not long after, Ugo and Teresa get married and take photos with the president and their respective families, including Count Francesco. Everyone poses for the final picture with a smile except for the uneasy Count, who has a vacant look in his eyes. While Ugo's trapped in a situation he previously thought would make him happy, Frida enjoys a relaxing vacation on a quiet beach in Bari, Italy. Soon, the Count calls his ex-girlfriend, but the unbothered woman doesn't pick up the phone.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.